voters in the state of Kentucky have defeated a ballot measure that would have defunded public schools and steered the money towards private schools. The ballot initiative would have allowed the state legislature to design school choice, so called school choice proposals that would have used their tax money to fund charter and private schools in addition to public schools, which of course would have just ended up steering all the money towards private schools because the whole point of the school choice movement is to starve public education. That's part of the right wing's efforts to privatize schools. Now, wait, why didn't the government just do vouchers? I mean, that's what happened in many other states where you had politicians that just did it anyway, regardless of what people thought about it. Well, it turns out that they tried back in 2021. The Kentucky legislature had proposed a private school voucher system. However, the state Supreme Court ended up blocking that plan because it violated the state's constitution, which stipulated that only common schools, that is, public schools that receive state taxpayer funding, would be eligible to receive such funding. So that's why they ended up turning it over to the people. That's really the only way that they had to make this happen. And certainly they tried to blanket the airways with propaganda, but thankfully it was soundly defeated. It turns out access to education is kind of important to voters, whether it be conservative voters or liberal voters. Doesn't matter. Everybody wants their child to have a quality education. Whether you're in the big city or you're in the rural areas, doesn't matter. You want your kids to have a good education. So now good education means funding, right? Now, after the amendment's defeat, Governor Andy Beshear issued a statement urging state legislatures to recognize the will of the people by ensuring that every Kentucky child gets a world-class public education. Let me just say, Governor Andy Beshear is kind of awesome. I really do like him. He was able to win the election in super red Kentucky, and he did so without having to throw transgender people under the bus. Democrats, you might want to pay attention and learn from this guy. All right. In fact, he had written an op-ed saying the Democrats should be focused on jobs, housing, and healthcare if they actually want to win elections. Here's what he said. Quote, if you're staring at the cost of your child's prescription and wondering how you're going to pay for it, both it and your family's dinner, the offense of the day in Washington, D.C., or the latest crazy thing a politician said, just isn't as important. Okay, so that's really a shot at the media as well, which tended to focus a lot on the insane things that Donald Trump would say every day. And of course, that ended up getting a lot of attention, the things that Trump would say, but it also ended up sane washing him. And so that's one of the big criticisms of mainstream media. Just, once you hear insane things all the time, well, they start becoming normalized. And that also happens when you bring on Trumpers, bring on weirdos to your shows like mainstream media would do, Trump administration officials, former officials, right-wingers, that would say these crazy things without a lot of pushback or maybe some pushback. But again, you hear those talking points, they get legitimized and then normalized. And so, unfortunately, that's what happens. Now, that said, Beshear is correct. Kamala Harris did not focus on the issues, right? Why do I say that? Because she palled around with Liz Cheney. He talked about how she wanted Republicans in her cabinet, a stronger border, okay, while bragging about how lethal our military is and claiming that Trump is a unique threat to our democracy, and not at all like other Republicans. Other Republicans are great. In fact, that's who we want. That's where we want more Republicans to vote for us. That's it. Yeah, never Trumpers, come out. The only problem is the never Trumpers, there's like 12 of them in the country. All right. They're all in mainstream media. Okay. The rest of the party, the actual voters, like, no, 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 he's exactly like us. That's why we like him. That's why we overwhelmingly voted for him. All right, well, there you go. Harris's mistake was listening to the Biden staffers, the Democratic consultants, and the mainstream media and the elites. She should have never listened to them. She should have continued with the whole, the wall strategy of like calling Republicans weird and talking about, hey, we're not going back, and we're going to do things for average people. And look, I did see some of her, a lot of her ads actually, since I live in a battleground state. Some of the ads were pretty good. We're talking about these issues, but overwhelmingly on the campaign trail, the focus was more, especially at the end of the campaign, Liz Cheney's brat. We love her. We love Republicans. Donald Trump, unique threat. And so no focus on woke. Okay. They didn't talk about that at all. They didn't talk about trans rights. All right. They didn't talk about any of that stuff that the elite is trying to distract you with. Okay. It's the elites in the party that are throwing minority groups under the bus to try to blame them for their mistakes, which is don't address material conditions. Don't do anything to upset our corporate donors. All right. So that's one of the problems, right? Now, look, the proof of that is a lot of the states that Donald Trump had carried in this election, they also voted for things like increasing the minimum wage, paid leave, and yes, against privatizing education. Donald Trump, of course, wants to eliminate the Department of Education. Okay. And yet these voters in these states, like, deep red Kentucky, were like, no, we love our public schools. Yeah. And by the way, these are progressive positions. The Democrats who didn't run on these progressive positions, they lost. And so it's really frustrating when I see them blaming, the woke. Andy Beshear is a great, counter to that, because Beshear has defended transgender people. All right. He noted that he has vetoed both anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ bills and says, quote, yet I still beat Mr. Trump's handpicked candidate last fall. And he said he did so because the voters trusted that his focus was improving their lives, their material conditions. When he vetoed those anti-LGBTQ bills, he also explained to the public that, look, I did so because of my faith. I believe all children are children of God. And whether people agree with my decision, they know why I'm making it. They know where I'm coming from. So Beshear is an authentic guy. Kamala Harris did not come across as an authentic person. Okay. And so that was one of the problems. It's one of the problems the elites have, is that they don't come across as real people. Donald Trump does not have that problem. He comes across as a real person. Insane, but a real person. Okay. Again, you ask Trump supporters, they're like, yeah, oh yeah, I believe him. He's being authentic. Okay. All right. So Beshear, also authentic, he gets it, and he shows that he gets it. And when it comes to the public schools, voters in Kentucky overwhelmingly voted to protect those schools from the rest of the Republican Party. And that's interesting too, because Donald Trump, while he is in charge of the Republican Party, has kind of shied away from some of the Republican positions. Okay. And so what you have here is people that don't align with the Republican positions on a lot of things, aligning with Donald Trump. That is very interesting. And it is a very interesting phenomenon that is going on here. Okay, that again needs study, people need to be paying attention as to how to appeal to the voters. And generally, I would think it's through improving their material conditions. Okay, now that said, Ron Zimmer, director of the Martin School of Public Policy at the University of Kentucky, said of these schools, these voters, there's a significant attachment to rural communities, local public schools, because they're the center for civic engagement in those communities. Yeah. With the election going the way that it did, I think it's time for Democrats to really start, I don't know, trying to go out and appeal to these people, okay? Because one of the problems the Democrats have is they're considered to be the elites, all right? And they've been writing off rural voters. Rural voters, though, have shown you that they want robust education, public education, okay? That's things that they want. And so, yeah, you have to be on their side, and you have to show them that you're on their side, because people don't like, generally, and we've seen this happen in bigger cities, by the way, where you end up having more people voting for private schools, charter schools. But in places like Kentucky, public schools win out because private schools don't show up in the country, all right? They don't show up in those places. And they end up being very important to rural voters and things that they actually want to protect. And I think that's really important, okay? So, Democrats, you got to stop underestimating rural voters. Start reaching out to them without sacrificing your own values, without throwing transgender people under the bus, without throwing black people under the bus, without throwing Latinos under the bus. You can still reach out to these voters by saying, we care about your material conditions, and we care about having your kids have access to a good education, because that's very important. They just showed you that it's very important to the voters of Kentucky. And if it's important there, it's important everywhere. Okay? And so we got to stop ceding ground to these Republicans, these Republican politicians who are not looking out for them, the voters, but are out there looking out for the donors. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.